thanks to Red Art Games for the review code. So, I've been playing Romancing Saga Minstrel Song Remaster International, a long title I know, over the last little while, and these are my impressions. In that time, I've put a moderate amount of hours into the game, though far less than I would have wanted for a true review, hence the impressions. This isn't my first Romancing Saga, as that was the remake of the second game Square Enix released last year. Mind you, I barely played that game. It's also not my first Square Enix PS2 game either, though it is definitely the one that's aged the poorest out of all the ones I've played through. I've played a bunch of those by now, and none have been as confusing without a manual as Romancing Saga has been. If it's your first time playing, there's a high chance you'll need a guide too. This is also the first Romancing Saga game I've put any considerable amount of time into, and I've been pleasantly surprised with my experience. I expected a more traditional JRPG, and have been through something very different from any expectations I originally held. The new international version has new translations into languages that the game never localized into, those being Italian, French, German, and Spanish. It also exists to finally give the game a physical copy through Red Art Games' website. The game's standard edition EU copy is available through Amazon if you don't want to import, while the ESRB copies are only available through Video Games Plus. The ESRB Collector's and Deluxe Edition is on VGP, and the EU version is on Red Art Games. That's a lot of information, I know. But if you want an ESRB version like I do, you're going to have to order it through VGP. This is also a different SKU/version of the game from the original, so unfortunately that means no upgrade for owners of the first re-release from 2022, as Red Art Games has technically published the newest version as opposed to Square Enix who published the first one. Still, a shame for anyone who's bought it in the past and wanted access to the newest localizations. I'll be honest, I planned on buying this game regardless, as I like owning Square Enix games physically. I probably still will buy it even though I got this review copy. Would I have played it if I bought it? Probably not, and I think I'm pretty similar to many physical collectors. Now that I have played Romancing Saga Minstrel Song for a decent amount of time, I want to say the game is very dated, though quite fun if you can get into its rhythm. If you like what you see, you'll probably like the game. If you enjoy PS2 RPGs, you may like it, and if you're a Square Enix fan like I am, this feels like a must-own considering it was initially a digital-only release. And its selling well improves the odds of other digital-only Square Enix games coming out internationally. If the people at Red Art Games or Square Enix are watching this, please, I'd love to own physical copies of FF15 Pocket Edition, true cartridge releases of the Life is Strange remasters, and the Voice of Cards trilogies, not including so many more it's not even funny, but that's enough begging for now. Romancing Saga Minstrel Song features a rather bland, turn-based combat system that does get deeper the further you play. It's also kinda charming, and while simple early on, I enjoyed battles. What sets Romancing Saga apart from other RPGs is the game's Glimmer system, where in the heat of combat, characters will, for lack of a better term, upgrade or switch their attack to an unlearned ability, coupled with abilities using a set number of durability points off a weapon, like in Fire Emblem or other RPGs. A decent amount of strategizing is necessary. Attacks can also be linked with people in your party, and some are ineffective against enemies. If you happen to run out of durability points, weapons can be mended and easily replaced if the worst happens. In Romancing Saga Minstrel Song, there aren't any real random encounters either, as from the earliest cave onwards, all enemies are visible on the world map, although they may be hard to avoid. It is nice not to be surprised by an enemy suddenly while not having a fully healed up party. The downside to this fact is that many would recommend avoiding combat entirely in Romancing Saga, as you can overlevel and be ineligible for certain quest lines. Enemies after being defeated will drop jewels, basically skill points, that can be spent at a vendor to gain more abilities. There's also something to be said about these little chibi-esque 3D models exploring this big world, and something even more appealing seeing them in combat set on the backdrop of the story of this world and a certain death that predated my adventure. Romancing Saga puts the control in the player's hands, they aren't guided, and the story relies more on them than it does the game. It is easier to think of this game as a successor to tabletop RPGs, with the classes and multiple character choices, than a typical Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest-esque JRPG. Romancing Saga Minstrel Song Remaster International is a re-release, with new additions to the remaster from 2022 of a PlayStation 2 game from 2005 that remade a Super Nintendo game from 1992. That's quite a long journey for a game, and you can definitely feel the age. Romancing Saga Minstrel Song Remastered is very dated, as you can tell from the gameplay on screen. It comes from the PlayStation 2, but unlike games like Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy, it's aged much worse. I'd still consider those games pretty modern, while this one I wouldn't think of that way. At least, it's not nearly as modern, despite it coming out a year prior to the former and 3 years after the latter. That is kind of expected considering this is a remaster of a Romancing Saga game, a series that never received nearly as much love as Enix's Dragon Quest or Squaresoft's Final Fantasy, from critics, RPG fans, and even the company behind it. Recently, there's been a barrage of Romancing Saga content from what feels like constant remasters to an actual new game, yet I can't call myself a fan of the series, and after playing this remaster, I still can't. This is a fairly basic release, although it does add quite a few quality of life improvements that are to be expected from a typical Square Enix re-release. Quality of life features such as the extremely helpful 2 to 3x speed option, in case you ever want to skip through backtracking, combat dialogue, or a truly mundane cutscene. Other than that one though, everything else is fairly bare bones in the remaster. There is no skipping enemy encounters, if they aren't avoided, and there's no way to become super powerful like the unlimited limit breaks of a few of the Final Fantasy re-releases. The lack of ability to turn off random encounters is really the worst aspect to the remaster, as once again, players can miss content by overleveling. What you see is what you get with this game. If you're interested in it, you've probably already bought it, and if you're inclined to purchase physical, nothing that I say positively or negatively could move you. Graphically, this Romancing Saga is very pleasing on the eyes. There's a nice quality to the visuals and a charm to the upscaled character models. Their textures are stretched out across these 3D models, and it just looks cute. The world is scaled largely, leading to the game feeling like a true adventure even though each area is disconnected by a map and countless loading screen animations. The downside to this art style is the relatively fixed camera. The world is 3D modeled, yet the player has zero control over the camera's positioning. Take a character running straight ahead into a dungeon, with no sense of what's ahead, you'll travel from village to village without any way to truly understand where you're headed. The lack of camera control and general guidance are the biggest flaws to the game itself, and ones that could have been fixed during the remastering process. Romancing Saga Minstrel Song is set in this town, I'm not saying the name, a land of royalty, monsters, and more. At the beginning you're presented with 8 choices of different characters to take throughout their own different adventure. They do intertwine. For example, Sif is one of the options to play as, and by the end of the first hour he was in my party. If you're someone who enjoys player choice in an RPG, or a comparably large world to explore at your own pace, then Romancing Saga would be the game for you. There is such an incredible amount of freedom to the game's detriment in my very casual opinion. Most of the world is unexplained, which gives the player the ability to figure out how they make their journey through the main storyline, and side quests too. It's not a typical JRPG, you are not on a set path like most in the genre. This isn't a game developer's set story with walls to prevent deviation, it's something entirely different. If you go into the game expecting a Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy or Tales of style JRPG, you're probably going to be let down, or worse, the game will not click with you. Romancing Saga is a wholly original or completely unique game in the RPG genre. It doesn't play in the boundaries of the titles surrounding it. It creates constraints that show why such a passionate yet niche audience love the series. If you don't play within Minstrel Song's boundaries, like I failed to at first, you will not enjoy the game nearly as much as you theoretically could or ideally should. This game is an acquired taste, and after playing this entry, I don't think I've acquired it yet. And it's extremely obvious why, but if you find something to love about Romancing Saga or enjoy playing within its open restrictions of the JRPG genre, you will undeniably love it. With the coming physical release of the International Edition, I think more people will potentially fall in love with it, or potentially play in their world's boundaries. Hopefully, they can get sucked into one of Square Enix's weirdest releases. I would have rathered a physical copy of something else, probably, but I can't deny that having a physical version of Romancing Saga Minstrel Song release that plays in high definition on modern hardware has a huge merit to it. I will eventually buy it because of that. Niche games deserve to be future-proofed, to have a presence for new people to find, and whether or not I adore the game more or less than others is a valid enough reason for why it should exist. Once again, thanks to Red Art Games and Press Engine for the code for their newest version. And thanks for watching my video. I'm sorry if my voice is a little messed up, I feel a little sick. I hope you enjoyed it along with my impressions of the game. If you did, liking, commenting, and subscribing greatly helps small channels like mine do better in the future in YouTube's incredible algorithm. Have a great day, and click on the videos on screen now for more JRPG related coverage from me.